Now there's another thing you need to understand about your variables, and that is the scope of your variables. And so in this video, which I've entitled Understanding Scope, I would like to help you understand scope. See how that works? So what I want to point out is that depending in C# on where we create our variable is what's going to determine the scope of that variable. Very plainly and simply, if we declare our variable inside a method like this, then our variable is only recognized inside that method. So we can use X anywhere between these two braces, anywhere outside, and we're going to have a problem. So notice I declared it inside there, but down here I'm going to create my own little method. I'll call it markTest. Okay, and I will set me up a little message box here. Message box.show, and in this I'm going to call X, and we're going to have a problem here, you can tell already, to string, and we're going to format it as C, and that should go. Now all I have to do is then from inside here call markTest. Now here's what should happen. We should click the button, X becomes 55, we're going to change the text of the button to 55, and then we're going to call markText. Then it is going to call the variable X and convert it to a string, and in a message box show it formatted as cash or as money. And the minute that I run this, it says, wait a minute dude, you got a problem. And I tell it to show me what the problem is, and it's telling me X does not exist in the current context. Now why is that? Well, it's because we declared X in this method, and now we're trying to use it outside this method. And I'll show you a little trick that you've done that. When I type X and hit the period, well actually you'll see it, this is a better way. If I hit X, notice the only thing that it sees is XML read mode. It doesn't see anything about any kind of object out there or any kind of property called X. So that won't run. We can fix this very simply. We're going to simply highlight our variable declaration, and we're going to drag it up here to the class level. And notice we put it right under the public class declaration line where we opened the class. And now when we try to run this, notice no problem. We're going to hit click, it sets the text, then it calls the message box and it formats it as money. Because here's what's happened. Since we put the variable at the class level, then any method or every method inside the class can now access that variable. Now here's something to think about, and this is what you have to watch with this scope. If I do a variable like this, I can introduce challenges to myself, okay? Because that means that different methods can change the value of X, and then I can come back and call this method assuming that it's one value when in fact it has changed. So if you're going to set these class level variables, before you use the variable in a method, you might want to test its value in an if statement. You want to do some sort of conditional branching to make sure that it is still what you indeed thought that it was when you called that method. Okay, so just kind of watch for that. But that is scope, and what you're going to hear, a couple of terms you're going to hear, first of all, is whether a variable has class scope, and it'll also be called a class variable, whether it has method scope, or it's called a method variable. And both of these determine what's called the lifetime, and you'll hear the word lifetime. The lifetime of this variable is that it lives as long as this class lives. If I put this variable inside one of my methods, then the lifetime of this is that it is only alive or in scope for the amount of time that this method is executing. Okay, so that's variable lifetime. So there's some terms for you. You're going to hear scope and lifetime, and that is exactly what those mean. And these kind of little problems can drive you nuts sometimes, and you just need to understand what's going on with the scope on your variables, and you can use these strategically to help you design your program in a very safe and effective manner.